Hi everyone, today I wanted to talk about my custom Redcat Gen 7 Unimog build. This Redcat Gen 7 is a truck that's been in my collection for a very long time. After I got rid of my original SCX-10, my first ever real quote-unquote crawler, I really regretted it and ended up replacing it with Gen 7, which was brand new at the time. This is one of the original release Gen 7s, but without a lot of the updates and upgrades on it that they have now. But I did still have a lot of fun with this truck, put tons and tons of miles on it, and it ran for the longest time as a Jeep Cherokee with an axial Cherokee body on it. So looked pretty cool to me and ran very well, and I absolutely adored this truck. But a couple years ago, I decided to kind of spruce it up a little bit and change it up. So I got this UMG10 body, axial body, and then custom stretched the body to fit on this longer Gen 7 wheelbase. Added the paint and detailed it up and everything, and ran it with these UMG10 tires, and was pretty happy with it overall. But the main sticking point with this build was it had straight axles on it. And if you know, the real Unimog has portal axles. So that was a little bit of a sticking point, but no portal axles are really available for cheap, so it was kind of whatever. But then eventually the Gen 8 came out with portal axles, and then even after that, the portal axle conversion kit for the Gen 7 came out. So it made it a perfect opportunity to kind of finish up this build and then really get it to be as accurate of a Unimog as possible. So let's go over this truck, see how it is built, take it on a quick little run, and talk about any future plans with it. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So starting off with the exterior, you can see the body is painted in this military matte green. And how I ended up doing this is I painted the inside of the body, I believe silver or black. I believe silver. Something like that, and then painted the outside with just like green Lexan paint, and I went over that again with the just like regular spray paint, and it gave a nice matte little finish and without cracking or chipping. So I think that worked out pretty well. This was before I knew about the flat clear from Tamiya, so this is the method I used, and I think it worked out pretty well. And you can see I have kind of a Gundam Xeon theme going on to this thing with the badge, with the kind of faded logo on the hood. Again in the back. So kind of designed it up to be like a Xeon scout truck or something. So I think it looks pretty nice. I like how this is all coincidental, but I like how the fuel tank here is nice and protected by the rock rails here. So that worked out. So I did mention I custom stretched the body. I kind of cut apart the bed area, and then with a lot of like wooden like popsicle sticks, I remade the rear bed. And the wood kind of gives it a vintage look, I think. So I think that worked out pretty well. And then for the cage, I did have to modify it. As you can see, it's kind of goopy here. I didn't really clean that up too well, but I did have to cut it apart and then cut out the spare tire mount and kind of glue it and stick it all back together to kind of form a new cage for it. And overall, I think it looks pretty cool. You can tell me if it looks weird or not, but I think it looks pretty cool. And you can kind of see where the original body kind of ended, because this used to be the rear of the bed. So stretch it out a good maybe 1.5 inches. So yeah. And then again, coincidentally, the inner fenders for the Gen 7 chassis lines up perfectly with the body. So that looks really nice, I think. And originally I had metal bumpers on this thing, but it looked a little bit weird with the metal bumpers, so I just went back to the stock Gen 7 bumpers, which are plastic and a little soft, but they look just fine. It's whatever. As for the grill, this is a 3D printed Unimog grill. I have a Mercedes-Benz badge for it, but decided to go with the Xeon badge instead. And as you can see, it does also have like light buckets and stuff on it. Again, this is kind of goopy because I tested it with Shugu, and unfortunately Shugu kind of ages and kind of gets gross if it's visible. So it's a little bit rough around the edges, but when it's moving around, I think it looks fine. But this grill and headlight kit came with a full light set, so it has like pulsing badge, and then like high beams and low beams. I'll show you that. I'll show you that. I'll show you guys that all in a second. But I think that kind of finished up the look of the Unimog as well. And you can also see the portal axles on the bottom. We'll dig more into that when we get to the chassis. Wheels and tires again are the stock wheels and tires from the UMG 10. They're not the softest tire and they're not the best performing tire, but this is not really a rock crawler anymore. It's more like a trail truck, so don't really mind. And I know Proline now makes a military style tread, so that is something I could look into in the future. What else? The rear doesn't really have any lights on it, and that's kind of basically it. The driver figure is painted, has the military guy in there. Looks pretty cool. The heatsink for the ESC kind of sticks through, which I think kind of looks cool as well. But yeah, as far as how the body is mounted, I did manage to retrofit the front body posts for the UMG 10. So there are two body clips in the bottom here, they're hidden. And the rear is just Velcro. So this just comes up and then attaches from there. And you can see under there the little light dongle. And here is the chassis. But before we go into the chassis, let me show you guys the light kit working really quick, and then we'll move on to the chassis. So here we have the chassis, and the reason I went with the Gen 7 over another SCX10 when I picked this up originally was because the Gen 7 is technically already an upgraded SCX10, and had a lot of features about it that I thought was really cool and was things that I wanted to do on my SCX10 to begin with. But also this thing cost much less than the SCX10. So like the inner fenders, the custom chassis, the full metal links, aluminum shocks that are also adjustable, metal diff covers. Well, I don't think the original Gen 7 had metal diff covers, but if you got a Gen 8, then they would have metal diff covers. So a lot of different parts on here, which I thought was pretty cool. And then I ended up making some other changes to it. As you saw down here, I put on the aluminum skid plate for the center here to kind of stiffen up the motor mount. I did have to modify the screw holes to get them to be flush though, because the original Gen 7 actually used cap screws in the bottom, which is dumb. They eventually did update the plastic part to have countersunk screws, but the aluminum upgrade part doesn't have countersunk screws. I'm not sure if that's still the case, but that was the case when I picked my piece up, so I did have to get that modified. And now it looks pretty good, nice and flush. So that's good now. You can see the portal axles down here, the Gen 7 portal axles. These are the V1 axles, so not the upgraded, more durable axles that you can get now, but they do still work pretty well. And I'm not too hard on this truck, so I'm not too concerned about it. The bumper mounts also, I added the aluminum upgrade ones on there. But other than that, I haven't really changed much about it. It's still using the stock ESC, still using the stock motor that's still running after all that abuse. It doesn't sound happy anymore, but it does still work. And the portal axle system, I think, works out pretty well, because even though it has the chassis mounted steering now, there's not that much body bump steer going on. The axle doesn't cycle perfectly straight, but at least there's no bump steer, so that's nice. And you can also tell that this is an older Gen 7 because it has the old Redcat logo on here, and then even the portal axle conversion has the old Redcat logo on there. So it is a bit old, but it is definitely a little workhorse. It has worked very, very well for a very long time. So I think it's pretty cool. I'm very happy with this thing. When I originally had this thing, I thought this was a very, very heavy truck. But some of my new builds have gotten so heavy that this actually doesn't feel that heavy anymore. So I think that's kind of funny. As far as some other upgrades I might put on it, I might change the ESC now, since this is the older Hobbywing ESC. And they work fine. They are a little bit chunky. And also because these trucks originally didn't have slipper clutches, how they got around not having a slipper clutch is having this ESC, which has a feature where if it torques the motor too much, it'll just stop working and just shut off, which is good for durability, I guess, but for performance, when you're really trying to get up a really tough rock, it just kind of gives up, which is kind of lame. So I might change this out for the smaller and more powerful, actually, 1060 Hobbywing brushed ESC. I believe it's 1060. But yeah, I might change that out. Motor is kind of due for a rebuild or replacement, I guess, because it's non-rebuildable. I'll show you guys what it sounds like running real quick. I won't really drive this one today, just because don't really have the time to drive it, but maybe, I guess, in the future you might see another driving video of this thing. I did make a driving video of this before it had the portal axles, so if you guys want to see that, you can check that out on my channel. Had a lot of fun making that video. But turning it on. So you can kind of, oh, there's my cat. You can kind of hear the bearings and the bushings in the motor are not happy. Some of the bearings in the transmission are also not really happy. So it is kind of due for a rebuild. But the question is, do I rebuild it? Because, like I mentioned in a previous video about my Land Rover Defender build, I'm kind of doing on the chopping block with a lot of my cars in my collection, because I do have so many. I'm trying to downsize a lot, especially crawlers. I'm trying to downsize some of my crawlers. So, kind of debating which ones to put on the chopping block. So that's also part of the reasons why I'm making overview videos of these things. Because in the case I get rid of it, I want kind of like a last little record of me talking about it and showing it off. And also, if I don't end up getting rid of it, as I'm kind of looking over it, I can kind of remember what kind of work it needed, and why I built it and stuff. So kind of going through the process of getting rid of some trucks. So we'll see if this one ends up getting sold off, or just ends up sticking around. So whatever the future is, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, have fun with RC.